Okay, so today's webinar comes from a business that has 18 years experience of recruiting and employing apprentices. Benchmarks furniture is made by craftsmen in their workshops in West Berkshire. Since launching in 1983, they've grown to become one of the leading and most technically advanced furniture companies in the country. Employing a team of 70, they make and sell their own furniture collection and work with many of the world's top architects and designers. The business took a stance on tropical timbers and endangered species right from the start, and in 2007 were awarded the Queen's Award for Enterprise in the Sustainable Development category, the first furniture maker to win this prestigious award. So we're absolutely delighted to welcome Sean Sutcliffe, MD and co-founder of Benchmarks, to the webinar today. Also joining the webinar is Matt Garvey, MD of the West Berkshire Training Consortium, the training organisation that trains Benchmarks apprentices. After Sean has shared Benchmarks experience, we're very grateful to have Matt here to provide an overview of how apprenticeships work for small businesses. Matt will also be on hand to answer any questions businesses have about apprenticeships, such as funding, frameworks and the practicalities around apprenticeships. And finally, we're delighted to welcome Jane Langley, founder of Blue Patch. Blue Patch is an online sustainable marketplace for UK design, ethical fashion, eco-furniture, green gifts, organic and fair trade food and many other types of businesses. Jane set up the marketplace to support and nurture British-made products and services from companies committed to sustainability. She's been the driving force behind today's webinar, as she was very keen to ensure that the businesses in the Blue Patch community were finding out how apprenticeships could help them grow their business and create a sustainable future for them and the apprentices too. So many thanks to you, Jane, as well, for joining us today. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Sean to talk us through how his business approaches apprenticeships.
I think what this picture shows is that 20 of those workshop team have come to us and remain with us through the route of apprenticeship. So 20, it's a little over half of our workshop workforce has come to us through apprenticeship. The rest have come through, coming from other firms and so forth. So that's a huge part of our team, and I think it shows, and the longest serving of those apprentices is 26 years. And so that shows, I think, a level of commitment and the depth to which we take this. It's a vital part of our business. It's a central part of our business. I think the next picture will show us, when the next picture is up, the next picture shows us broadly how we do this. And what we see here is old and young, or older and younger, let's say. The way that we learn through apprenticeship is principally we learn from our colleagues. Yes, we go to college as well, but the greater part of the learning will come on a continuous day-to-day basis by working with your colleagues. And we try to team up apprentices with mentors. And under the guidance of Kelvin Dennis, who's our apprentice training manager, who oversees all of the apprentices, each apprentice will have a mentor that he or she can turn to, and we hope takes a special interest in the learning and the well-being of that apprentice in the workshop. The next picture, I'm going to introduce you to some of our apprentices from now. The next picture, Sophie, is it coming up?
Sorry, it's a bit of a delay when I do it, so sorry about that.
Okay. I'll be this is my right-hand man. This is Stephen Huzzy. He's my co-director. He's been a director for 10 years, but he joined the business when he was 16 years old, and he's been here 25 years. He trained as a cabinet maker. He became a senior cabinet maker. He actually then had a very bad motorcycle accident and couldn't carry on cabinet making, and so we brought him up and taught him to draw. And through being up in the drawing office, he just developed an interest and became very good at sort of understanding the way that the contract side of the business works. And he now is an invaluable part of our management team. So it gives, if it shows nothing else, it shows that you can join as an apprentice and end up running the business. and that's what this picture seeks to demonstrate. We're going to meet a few more ex-apprentices. We're not going to go through the whole lot, but here we have Mark Paradise, or left, as he's a little older, a little wiser. There's a real joy that I get personally, and I think the whole team gets, in seeing this transition from boy to man or girl to woman as they develop, not just professionally. I mean, Mark is now an absolute top-level maker, will happily travel anywhere in the UK or jump on a plane anywhere in the world to go and do work and represent our business. And when I look back at the picture of the young boy on the left, you think, gosh, he's come a long way. It's a professional success. I also find it an incredibly rewarding thing to see that sort of blossoming from youth to adulthood that one witnesses through apprenticeship. And I think that's another of the kind of gifts that apprenticeship gives. The next picture that we'll come to is another of our past apprentices. His name is Graham Martin. He's been with us 8 years, and he trained with us for the first year as apprentice. He trained to NVQ level 3, getting distinctions and merits all the way through, and he's now one of our past apprentices and a kind of what I'd call a middleweight maker. So hasn't joined the esteemed echelons of the top makers, but he's a very competent, very joyful person to work with. And he now stands there as a young adult, competent in his skills. And once again, I repeat this fantastic reward that there is in seeing the transition. And I hope that he will be a career-long cabinet maker in our team. The next person I will just briefly mention is Danny Thomas. And the reason to mention him is that he originally came and trained with us as an apprentice wood machinist. And he then served a couple of years in the machine shop before expressing an interest in transferring to a cabinet maker's apprenticeship. So he did. He took some of the skills were transportable, but he then went back to college and further studied as in handmade furniture. And he then became one of our senior craftsmen in the workshop. And then some 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, he expressed an interest in joining our drawing office, our design team. And so he again went back to college and trained as a CAD draftsman, and now sits right in the middle of our drawing team. We have some 10, a drawing office of 10. We seem to have lost the picture on screen. There he is back. So I think the thing to stress in his example is that apprenticeship doesn't stop at your first qualification, and we try to keep everybody's mind open to the possibility of extending their learning really throughout their career. I mean, so we've now gone on to Mark Hinton. Mark has been with us member of staff, and you see on the right there, you see him as a young person. That was when we were doing a job in Paris, and he's standing on the top of the Eiffel Tower, peering out. As he is now on the left, he's our veneer shop manager. He's worked in every part of the business. He's worked in, as a cabinet maker, as a polisher, veneerer, machinist, the lot. And again, it's this transferable nature that we will support people through their apprenticeship, but the training carries on. And again, I think this is one of the beauties of apprenticeship. You get this homegrown nurturing, which doesn't stop at the end of your apprenticeship. The next picture shows my colleague Kelvin Dennis, who's sitting here beside me. Kelvin came age 16 and trained as a cabinet maker. He worked his way up. He became a very competent cabinet maker, worked his way up to one of our senior makers quite quickly. He's always taken an interest in the other trainees and the other apprentices, so much so that a few years ago we offered him the opportunity to become our apprentice training manager. And he went back to college and he undertook to train himself as an NVQ level 3 assessor. So he's, again, it's this extended learning. One of the really lovely things about his role is that the other apprentices, and you see on the right there, he's with Archie Lewis, who, on the previous picture, we see him with Archie Lewis. Archie, as all the apprentices can look at Kelvin. They have great confidence. They know what a good maker he is. And they also know that his time is theirs to ask. It's his job to teach them. And therefore, there's no embarrassment. There's no feeling, oh, I don't want to disturb anyone. That's his job. And I think that's a really important point to convey about apprenticeship, is that those of us who are trained apprentices, it's our job to train them. We're lucky enough now that we've got somebody as diligent as Kelvin, and we've also, you know, we're big enough that we're able to make that a role for him to play. But even if it's a small part of your role, you know, in a smaller business where, you know, you can't devote a whole person's time to apprentice training, it's still there. It's still a responsibility, and that's really key to stress, that if you take on apprentices, the rewards are huge in terms of your long-term workforce, but you'll get as good as you give, and you know, the more you give, the better the results you'll get. Talking of good results, the next picture, here we see Joe Robbins. Joe Robbins has been with us 5 years. He went all through his college. He got distinctions in every single module he took through college. He's a really positive member of staff. He won the Freeman of Oxford's, he's at college in Oxford, and he won the Freeman of Oxford's award as the top apprentice. And if we go to the next picture, I'm hoping that we will see, yes we do, this is his last week's graduation ceremony. And why I've included this picture is because this kind of picture just never would have been included up until really this last year or two. Apprenticeship would never have been considered worthy of a proper graduation ceremony. And it makes me really proud to see him standing there in a graduate gown and mortarboard. And I hope, you know, he takes pride in that, even if he did feel slightly self-conscious wearing it and whipped it off at the earliest opportunity. And I hope that it kind of elevates. An image like this, I think, only serves to elevate the respect with which we hold apprenticeship. You know, it's been through some dark years where people have regarded it as just cheap labour or not worth doing or so forth. When I see Joe Robbins in his graduation gown, you know, I have no doubt the message that gives about how serious apprenticeship is. So the next picture, we're nearly there, I think. This just shows, I think this picture conveys rather well how we work as a team. This is the team in our metal shop. The guy in the middle, Craig, has trained the one on his right and his left, and they work as a team. And if everybody in our business knows that the apprentices are our future. They're our future workforce. And therefore, it's incumbent on everyone to do their best, to pass on whatever knowledge, enthusiasm they can. And I think this encapsulates it rather well, that, you know, you've got this little team of 3 that work together, and Craig in the middle, you know, I'm smiling unusually more than he normally does. The next 2 pictures show our 6 current apprentices, Harry, Archie, Will, and the next picture, Jo, Hattie, who's our only girl apprentice currently, and Josh, who's sitting here with me. It's a measure of how much I believe in apprenticeship that the left-hand picture there, Joe, he's my son. Now, I wouldn't be advising my son to go through apprenticeship if I didn't believe in it. So I think that's a measure of how much I believe in it personally, that you see there, my son in the team. Moving forward to the next picture, it's really important that we as training providers, as apprentice makers, give an apprentice some kind of structure. They should, ideally, they should be able to see what their future looks like. And what you're seeing here is an apprentice training plan. And these are issued to our apprentices so they can see which area they'll be working in, whether they're in the mill, the spray shop, metalworking, warehouse and distribution, the hand shop, the design office, or the near shop. They'll get experiences in all those departments. And the more structure that we can build into this, the more aspirational I think it can become. It's very difficult for a young apprentice with very little experience in the workplace to kind of feel confident that his training is going to be good if he has no visibility of the future. So we try to make it as visible as possible. Of course, there are times when we deviate from this plan. Things change, priorities change, and it's not set in concrete, but it is a framework that they can look at and believe in. And the next picture shows some typical projects that apprentices would undertake. So on the left, there's a simple stool, and this would be, they would normally do this at college. It would be undertaken, and here in the workplace. So actually, sorry, these ones here are workplace projects. So these are not their college projects. So these are additional to the requirements made on them at college, and we've designed a simple stool on the left for first-year apprentices to make, and a jewellery box on the right for the second-year apprentices to make. And these will be run under Kelvin's guidance, and it gives a chance for each of them to have something that they own in every sense. They own the planning of the job, they own the making of the job, and they own the quality of the finished piece. They of course own the finished piece as well. And it becomes a little bit internally competitive, whose is better than whose. They're pretty supportive of each other, but it gives a tangible result to their learning that's sort of accessible as we go. And the next picture shows our application assessment procedure, because one of the questions that a lot of people ask is, well, how do you know who to choose? How do you get hold of your apprentices? We work with all our local schools. All the design and technology departments will request places within our business for work experience. And so we will have, through the course of the year, maybe 20 young people, school people, coming for generally a week's work experience. Those who are, we'll take note of them during the course of that week. We keep a record and a file of them. Those that are keen will undoubtedly express a wish to be considered for apprenticeship. Those who have expressed that wish will come back and do preferably a 2-week period for assessment. And during that period, we'll do a couple of things. We'll sort of anecdotally, we'll watch them. Everybody, all the senior makers, and particularly anyone they're working alongside, will be asked to report back on their attitude, their commitment, how hard they work, their concentration, their skill levels. We'll also give them what you see on the screen before you, which is these are 2 pages taken from about an 8-page written assessment that we've devised. It's just to check their basic numeracy, their basic ability in reasoning, and their literacy. And this is really just so we know what the starting point is. It's not going to exclude somebody if they don't do very well in this, but they'll have to be stronger in other areas in order to see this. And I think that what we're trying to get to in this whole 2-week of assessment is who has the heart of a craftsman. So it doesn't matter that their numeracy is great or their literacy is great. What we will be looking for above all else is the heart of a craftsman. And then the next image, giving them the tools for the trade. It's no good taking on an apprentice and him having no tools or rubbish tools. So as craftsmen, we do take pride in our tools. There's an age-old adage that says a bad craftsman blames his tools. Well, I would say quite rightly so, because no matter how good the craftsman, if your tools are rubbish, you're never going to do a first-class job. So we right at the outset, when somebody starts their formal apprenticeship with us, we give them their toolkit. They repay us at sort of £5 a week or whatever they can afford, so that they feel ownership of it from the beginning, and they take pride in it. But giving that starting, a young person takes a huge amount of pride in the tools for their job, whatever those tools might be, and I think that's important. And then we're going to very quickly rattle through, just so you can get an idea of what we might make. This is a shed that we made for Paul Smith. Very beautiful, and it's at one end of the spectrum of what we make. The next picture shows a range of furniture called Shake, and this took our craftsmen and our apprentices into new areas of learning about woodland coppicing. We batch produce this, sell it through our showrooms and off our website, and it just is really there to show that we're always trying to learn new skills. It is kind of traditional woodworking made new. The next picture shows Oscar tables and benches. Every one of these is always going to be different. It's really the craftsman needs to respond to the wood, and this is a job. It's kind of robust. Its skill level is fairly forgiving, and so it's something that an apprentice can tackle with confidence. The next image shows a couple of some of the projects we might work in. So everyone will recognize this door. They may not recognize the door in this format. This was part of the Great Creativity exhibition, which was shown in Shanghai during Prince William's visit to Shanghai, or to China. And we were invited to take part in this, and we made the new front door for number 10. So projects like this kind of, they give some excitement and buzz in the workshop. Of course, that's a particularly highlight one. The next one shows a large-scale piece of woodworking. This is the Sage Concert Hall in Gateshead, which we did. It was a massive project, lasted several years from conception to completion. But again, gave us something. We won the Wood Awards in that year for this project, and again, it gave everyone quite a lot of pride. And the last picture is perhaps one of our most recent projects. This is the new cathedra and crucifix that is in Leicester Cathedral. It was installed just before the reburial of Richard III. And in the picture there, you'll see sitting in the cathedra, pretending to be bishop. We'll see Graham Martin, who is, a recently qualified apprentice who was centrally involved in the making, and two others in the team involved to his right and left. So it's about inspiration. It's about commitment. There's no doubt that, you'll get as good as you put in, and you're not going to get great apprentices and great employees if you don't give them attention, nurturing, and belief. You've got to believe that they are the future of your business, as we do. So who wants to ask me any questions on that, or to make comments?
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Sean. And having been to the theatre, the concert hall at Sage several times, it's just wonderful. It's one of the most amazing spaces you can sit in. So it's just
it's a wonderful woody interior, isn't it?
Oh, it's just a great place to be, and it's just the acoustics are fantastic, and it's amazing, and I find it fascinating, the whole process. I've got a couple of questions that have come in, and a couple I wanted to ask you anyway that have been cropped up from businesses over the last few months. One of the things that businesses often worry about is the management time involved in employing apprentices, as opposed to other staff. What are your thoughts on that? Does it take extra time to manage apprentices, and is it over onerous, or do you find it doable?
It certainly takes a lot of management time. It takes a lot of management time if you want to do it well. What you've got to weigh up is, if you don't invest that management time, where are your future staff going to come from? So yes, it does, and it takes, whether you call it management time or mentoring time, time does get spent. My comment back on that would be that time very well spent. I would actually maybe see if you didn't hear the question, but the question that said,
hello? Are you passing over to Steve Cooper at this point? Hello, hello. We seem to have lost you. Okay, so we seem to have lost Sean briefly. Matt, are you still on the line?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Brilliant. Hi. We've lost Sean, so can I ask a question of you as well? One of the concerns is around management time and concerns around young people. What are your experiences of working with businesses in this area? Do you find that employing young people is especially difficult for businesses, or have you found that the benefits outweigh any issues with it?
Well, Sophie, specifically on management time, I think Sean has given a good illustration that apprenticeships are a lived experience. And if you're going to invest in a young person, you're not just investing in their skills, but they're a developing personality as well. And that comes with a number of challenges. It comes with a number of joys as well. So I would say to any employer going into apprenticeships for the first time, be prepared to put in the time and effort to coach, mentor, and pastorally support a young person, because then you're going to get the most out of that young person as they develop.
Yeah, yeah. We've got a question from the floor that I think would be great for you to answer as well, Matt. It's a business that says that they've advertised for an apprentice in business administration without any success. They've had 4 applicants but 4 no-shows. What would you recommend? Are they doing something wrong? Why might that be happening? And is it something that you've experienced? And what could they be doing differently?
Yes, if I had £1 for every no-show, I could have retired a long time ago.
Okay.
So I really sympathise. First and foremost, apprentice recruitment is cyclical. And what you tend to find from my experience is the greatest supply of young people occurs from, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks from now, when a lot of young people have left to sit their exams, GCSEs and A-levels. It peaks in June, July and August, and then it starts to tail away. So you could be looking in your area at a particularly difficult time of the year where there's just not the numbers and not the quality of applicants. However, without knowing the vacancy, it could be they're paying below the market rate. It could be that it's in a difficult to get to location. Finding the right person is a challenge for a number of different reasons, and hopefully this employer has got a good training provider giving them some good quality advice and guidance.
Okay, great, thank you. I think, Sean, are you there? Can you hear us now? No, we do seem to have temporarily lost Sean, so hopefully we'll get you back.
Sophie, can you hear me now?
There, you're there, brilliant.
Okay, Sophie, sorry, we lost you temporarily.
Okay, no worries. So we just talked about a business that was struggling with...
I heard that. I was listening to you. Great. You just couldn't hear me.
Oh, right, okay. And did you have anything to add on that one?
Well, I certainly echo what Matt says about it being cyclical. It is a cyclical thing. You know, there's a time of year for recruiting and looking at apprentices, and there's times of year when you just get on with training them. And now is the critical time for the looking and the recruiting. And I also would comment that his point about a good training provider, I think we've been very lucky in working with West Berkshire Training Consortium, because their business and our business was starting at the same time, some 30 years ago. And there was a kind of meeting of minds. We were both energetic young businesses determined to make this work, and we've partnered for 30 years now. And I think that it is crucial that you seek and find a training provider that's a good fit with you, whether you're a sole trader, individual person looking to take on your first apprentice or a bigger business. That partnership with the training provider is really important.
Yeah, great. Well, that sounds like a great cue to hand over to Matt. Matt, would you be able to talk us through the apprenticeship process? I have a couple of slides to help you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who have not got involved in apprenticeships before, it is what I would call a real job. So we're looking at 30 hours or more a week and paid. And there is an apprenticeship minimum wage which sits in sort of the schedule of the national minimum wage, and it is worth employers checking that out so they can be absolutely sure they can at least meet the minimum hourly rate for their apprentices, bearing in mind that that also includes the hours spent off the job, for example on a day release at college. An apprenticeship should last a minimum of a year, particularly for 16 to 18-year-olds. That's the law. It can't be squeezed or condensed. Quite rightly so, you need to give the space and the time to embed those skills. And it is linked to a group of qualifications, which we call a framework. So by the time an apprentice has finished their full program, they'll actually have achieved a whole group of qualifications. And the next slides will help illustrate the formal part of the apprenticeship in terms of the qualifications that are going to be achieved. Now, Sean illustrated that the business who takes on the apprentice, they're spending their time providing training on not just how to do that particular skill set, but how the business does that particular skill set. Because I'm sure that cabinet making and furniture making at Benchmark is done in a particular way to them compared to another organisation. And those skills are then assessed, they're benchmarked against a national set of standards, and that's the competency part of the framework, and that yields at the end of it a qualification in its own right, for example an NVQ diploma. Furthermore, the apprenticeship wants the apprentice not only to be able to do something, but to, if you like, know why they're doing it in that particular way. That's the knowledge-based part. It's usually examined, and it will encompass, for example, let's say in engineering, it will encompass things like maths, design and science. In addition, some apprentices, if they haven't already attained maths and English at GCSE to a certain level, will take those qualifications as part of the framework, and then alongside that they'll be doing some work-based projects, and an apprentice has to achieve all of those. 99% isn't good enough. It has to be every single component must be achieved for them at the end to get their apprenticeship framework. And that's absolutely critical from our perspective as a training provider, because a training provider's success rate, which I'll come on to in a moment, is adjudged by the percentage of apprentices who complete the full program. 99% is not a completed framework. It has to be the full caboodle. Now, an apprentice's journey, Sean illustrated, well, an apprentice's journey can start at 16 and go right through the entirety of their life as they never stop learning and progress. But if I just take the apprentice's journey for the purposes of a formal apprenticeship, most apprentices start at level 2, what we call an intermediate apprenticeship, and certainly at Benchmark Furniture that's a familiar starting point. And then about a third of all apprentices will progress onto the advanced apprenticeship, the level 3. The intermediate is the entry point, if you like. It is introducing the apprentice to the sort of broad brush of that industry, and the level 3, the advanced, as the word suggests, takes those skills to a much more intricate level. And then more recently introduces the higher apprenticeships at level 4 and 5, which are, make at the present moment a very small percentage of all those hundreds of thousands of apprenticeships that are going on. You don't have to do one level to go on to the next, but in craft orientated apprenticeships such as furniture making, plumbing, engineering, that is very, very common. But in other apprenticeships, for example, business administration or accountancy, you'll find young people and employers able to perhaps not do level 2 and go straight in at level 3. The slide on your screen now just is an illustration of how this apprenticeship framework is made up, and each one will be attached and approved by an awarding body such as City and Guilds or BTEC, for example. BTEC now being the largest awarding body for apprenticeships. So that's what an apprenticeship looks like in a very broad brush. As Sean has already talked about, when I said an apprenticeship should last a minimum of a year, in these sort of high-skilled occupational sectors, we're really talking 3-4 years, with then apprentices potentially going on to study either occupational qualifications or H&D, H&C, and so on and so forth. But the plan, I believe, of one of the plans for whoever comes into government next is to take apprenticeships beyond level 4 and 5 and really start to offer them alongside higher education, so that a young person could find themselves on quite a long development plan through to full qualification in their sector. And that's an apprenticeship in a nutshell.
Fantastic, thank you. A couple of questions. What should a business be expecting from their training provider? What kind of service should they be expecting?
Well, my view is that the operation of the funding, of the arranging of the off-the-job training, of the accreditation, all that stuff that isn't the employer's business, that's the job of the training provider. They should be there to, for the uninitiated employer in particular, to really sort of hold their hand and be a buddy through the duration of that program. Certainly my view is call us as a training provider about anything, and if it's not in our purview, we'll try to signpost you in the right direction. So I'd hate for any employer to embark on this thinking they're on their own. It's a tripartite arrangement. You've got the apprentice who's bringing something to the party, clearly the employer is as well, and then the training provider is sort of the pack horse who should be making it as easy for the employer to take on and train that apprentice.
Fantastic. Some businesses sometimes struggle to find a training provider. What can they do? They can't find one in their sector. Is there, are they looking in the right places?
If you're in a very niche sector, this is the biggest obstacle, because there may well be a training provider that delivers, let's say, printing, but they may be 150 miles away or even further. So training providers, colleges, independent providers like ourselves, don't forget they're a business, and they will deliver programs where there is a market. So first and foremost, I would recommend a website called FE Choices, and you can pop in your postcode and it will bring up colleges and providers in your local area, depending on the radius that you set, and it will give you employer and learner satisfaction scores. So it gives you a general idea as the customer whether this organisation has a good reputation amongst its existing customer base. And you can then link straight to their website and see if they offer the occupational sector you're looking for. You can check their success rates and find out about their Ofsted score, because providers are inspected just like schools and colleges. And just be discerning. You know, if you're in the city, there might be 20 or 30 local providers. If you're in a rural area, you may have less choice.
Okay, brilliant.
Thank you. Can you hear me? This is Sean Sutcliffe again.
Yes.
I was just in response to that last question. Is this something that Apprenticemakers, you as Apprenticemakers, are hoping to facilitate as well? Is it? Can we log on to your Apprenticemakers website and search for a training provider?
No, you can't currently, and what we would normally do is refer people to the search for a training organisation tool, which is on gov.uk now. So I was interested to hear about FE choices as well, and that's something that we'll be taking a look at and seeing whether that's another place that that we can signpost businesses to. It's a question that's come in from a few businesses where they have been struggling to find a training provider that for their sector. So I guess what I feel Apprenticemakers can help with there is sometimes training providers that are quite niche may not have the biggest promotional budget to let businesses know about them, and so Apprenticemakers is a way for businesses to share their knowledge in that area. And so if you are, you know, working in a niche business, go onto Apprenticemakers, see if you can find a similar business and contact them and see who they're working with. And that, I think, is, you know, going through those networks, going through employer networks might be, if you're struggling, a way to unearth a training organisation that you haven't thought of before, because obviously it goes beyond FE colleges, and there are so many small training organisations that are doing a fantastic job for niche sectors. So I can see that that's where Apprenticemakers can facilitate those kind of connections. Okay.
Thank you.
I thought, because we're quite low on time now, as is always the case, Jane, are you happy to ask a couple of questions from the businesses that you work with? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is from a clothing business. It's a two-part question. First, can we take an apprentice from any age group, and do they have to not have a degree? What happens if you have someone who's got a degree already but it's in an unrelated field? Does that disqualify them?
So probably a quick one for Matt there. Who's, are you able to answer that, Matt? Hello, Matt. Oh, he's disappeared. Sean,
can you hear me?
That one?
Okay,
oh, yeah, sorry,
Matt's back.
Matt's back, brilliant.
Right. The short answer is, if you are already qualified at level 4, which is where an undergraduate will usually complete their degree, is usually at level 4, then you will not be able to attract funding to do an apprenticeship, which is probably what most employers are trying to zone in on. And it doesn't matter if that degree is in something completely unrelated. You're just sort of, the government's view is you've had your funding, so to speak, so we're not going to fund you for a degree and an apprenticeship. For the many people who don't have a degree, funding is available at any age, but employers should note that notionally the government will put in 100% of the funding at 16 to 18, then it will halve it at 19 to 23-year-olds, and then it will take it down to about 40% when you hit 24. So you may take on a more mature person to be an apprentice, and then your provider or college will most likely say to you as the employer, we need you to help make up the difference in the funding.
Great.
Thank you. This one's for Sean and Matt, and it's about woodworking. So the question was, are workshops probably not safe for an apprentice? It's just me working here as a sole trader. To make my workshop safe would probably cost me a lot of money and puts me off. Are there safety guidelines, and what are the key things to look out for?
Okay, this is Sean speaking. I'm a little concerned by the questions that our workshop is probably not safe for an apprentice. I'd venture that if it's not safe for an apprentice, it's not safe for a skilled craftsman. I think that, yes, we do have to comply, and we do get safety inspections. But we get safety inspections anyway. We get inspections by the HSE. We get inspections by our insurance company. And so we welcome inspection at any point, because, you know, whether it's an apprentice's health and safety or, you know, a 50-year-old craftsman's health and safety, they both count. And so I certainly wouldn't be put off by that. Now, is there going to be expense involved? There's probably more effort than expense. You probably do have to, you know, have some kind of written documentation, some kind of health and safety policy, but it doesn't have to be very onerous. And again, I would make the point that it should probably be in place anyway. Even if you're a one-man business, it doesn't hurt to focus your attention for a few hours or a weekend or something on your own health and safety. So yes, there are certainly regulatory points, and there are certain age groups that aren't allowed to do certain operations. There are certain machines that you have to be over 18 to operate, and so forth. But, you know, that's sort of common sense. Matt, I don't know if you would add to that. You're familiar with our situation anyway.
Well, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, to be honest, Sean. If taking on an apprentice really doesn't add health and safety burdens, other than, you know, the age limit on some machinery, as you have mentioned. What sort of self-employed people sometimes find a bit of an obstacle is, of course, they now may need to take it on employers' liability insurance, which they weren't required to do when they were just on their own, as this person is in a workshop. But I've never known an employer who's really interested in apprenticeships be put off because there was some sort of health and safety issue.
No, I think the key point you make there, Matt, is, you know, you've got to want to do it. If you're put off by the simple health and safety issues, you're probably going to be put off by all the other burden that's going to come with it anyway. You know, you need enthusiasm. You need to want this to happen. You need to see this as the growth pattern for your business. But if you do see that, then the regulatory impediments, so, you know, they're not that great.
Okay,
Jane,
thank you.
You've got another question?
Yes, I have. Right. Sole trader in a rural location, how do I afford transport on top of paying someone when I'm being expected to train them too?
Transport to clarify that question,
from a workshop. If the workshop is, you know, miles from anywhere.
Well, our workshop is miles from anywhere. Our workshop's on a converted farm in the middle of the countryside. Apprentices make their own way here. If that means that for the first year they're being driven here by their mum, dad, brother, sister, whatever, or they're car sharing with another member of staff, which is what normally happens, or they, you know, some come by bicycle. It's not my responsibility to get people here to work. At least I don't consider it my responsibility to get people here to work. Where we do take some responsibility is transport to and from college, and we as an employer do fund the transport from here to Oxford. But then, you know, we've got 5 people in or 6 people in a car sharing, and we just provide a vehicle for them to take. But I can see that is a burden. But certainly getting them to work on a daily basis is not the employer's responsibility, I don't think, Matt, is it?
I tend to agree with you there. I think, you know, I think if it's an attractive offer and they want to work with you, then I think they make their own way there, as most of us do.
We don't offer a school bus, that's for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Except to go to college. We offer the school bus to go to college.
Yeah, yeah. One last question. Is there a favourite question that's still there? I know there's a few others as well, and we'll share these questions after the webinar as well, because I know that these have been already looked at. Yeah.
Well, one that's come up quite a lot is if you have an apprentice and you train them and you invest lots of time and energy into that young person, what's the guarantee that when you've finished all that training, they don't up and go and work somewhere else or for themselves and it was all for nothing?
Absolutely no guarantee at all. That, again, as the trainer and the potential employer, becomes my responsibility. That's my view. I have to make working in my business a more attractive proposition than going and working down the road for somebody else. We have incredibly good retention rates for our apprentices, and that's because we offer an attractive package of it. It's a nice place to work. We're a pleasant team to work in. We try and pay competitive rates of pay. We don't pay more or less than anybody else, I don't think. But it's once they're qualified, you're in a beauty parade. You have the advantage that they're familiar. We also have one of the great advantages, I think, of apprenticeship in recruitment is that you're recruiting locally. So rather than taking college leavers on from 100 miles away or 200 miles away, I'm recruiting people who live in our local village, our local towns, and so they have people have a natural pattern to stay in their kind of where they grew up. From there on, it's just a question of making them an offer that's attractive enough for them to stay and want to make their career in your business. It's pretty simple, really, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, I think we've reached 2 p.m. and I think I know we've got other questions that have come from the Blue Patch community and direct. One of the questions that I can answer quite quickly is someone asking where do youngsters look for apprenticeships. Well, they too should go to gov.uk and they can find out all about apprenticeships there, and they can find out how to find apprenticeships at the apprenticeship vacancies service, so they can see vacancies that are available. What I would add to that is that apprentices, in my experience, when I've interviewed businesses, have often contacted the businesses direct and said, I'd love to do an apprenticeship with your business, and would you consider me? And that has often been, for small businesses, the thing that has started them on their apprenticeship journey. So I think it's good to encourage young people to not be shy and to get out there and meet businesses and to send their CV to businesses saying, I'd love to do an apprenticeship. Would you agree with that, Sean?
Yes, I mean, we get the bulk of our applications are people have found us or they've come through their schools. And I would encourage you, any young people listening to this who are considering apprenticeship, find a firm you want to work with, write to them, email them, go and see them, knock on their door, just turn up. We've quite literally employed people in the past who just turned up and says, I like your business, I know what you do, I'd love to work with you. Show some enthusiasm. A little bit of enthusiasm goes a very, very long way.
Yeah.
And seek them out. Seek out the firms you want to work for, and hopefully they will do an apprenticeship scheme. And if they're not doing one, ask them if they'll start one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there because we've gone slightly 2 minutes over time. I think that's forgivable. I'd like to thank again the speakers that have joined us today. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for your patience with the technicalities of it all as well. And I hope that if anyone's got any other questions, they do send them over to me, and I'm happy to field those with the speakers that are here today and see if we can get some questions after the event for you, because there are a few that have come in that are quite specific that we'll be able to help with. So we'll support that after the event. Please get involved in Apprenticemakers and connect with businesses on there as well. And thanks again, Sean, Matt, Jane, for your time. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today.
Thank you, Sophie. Sophie, just to be clear on one point, this webinar remains available on your website.
Yes.
So if people want to refer back to it.
It's been recorded and it will be in the webinar history section of the Apprenticemakers website after, it should go online in the next couple of days.
Super.
So I will email everyone that signed up today to let them know when that's live. Thanks for reminding me of that, Sean. Probably should have added that on the end there. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.